Good morning and welcome. This is Duke Children's Facebook Live. My name is Richard Chung. I'm Director of Adolescent Medicine here at Duke, and I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Dr. Dan Ostrovsky. Dr. Ostrovsky is here as one of our medicine pediatrics physicians. What that means is that he is a physician who can care for any person throughout the age span. But we are here to talk about children and the families who care for them. Thank you, Dr. Ostrovsky, for being here.
Thanks, Manny. Richard, nice to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So, our topic for today is summertime safety. I don't know about you, but my kids are out of school now, and everything is crazy. They're wanting to get into everything and go out and do all sorts of things. And I think most parents are eager for their kids to do all sorts of fun things and make special memories. But with anything, obviously, there's always some concern for risk and safety. And so what we wanted to do today is to talk about some of the common questions that come up from parents and families about summertime activities, how to maximize fun and joy for the kids, while also making sure that they stay safe and happy. Does that sound good?
Sounds like a plan to me.
All right, very good. So
let's do it.
Again, Dr. Ostrovsky works in our medicine pediatrics practice. So this is up on Roxborough Street, and he sees all sorts of young people of various ages, including the entire families, as the opportunities allow. And so he has great expertise and very sort of practical advice. And so let's start with this, Dr. Ostrovsky. So I was out with our family at Pelican Snowball the other day. Do you know that place?
How could I not? I got two kids of my own.
Very good. Snow cones
It's a favorite, a Durham classic.
And I was enjoying my snow cone or my snow cup or whatever they call it. And but I got bitten by these pesky insects. And so I wanted to kind of start there because I think, whether it's mosquitoes or ticks or other things, I think bites from insects is always a concern. And so what do you think of as kind of the main concerns or risks that families should be aware of in terms of bites during the summertime?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is the most obvious one is first, they're annoying. I mean, no one likes getting bit by no-see-ums, especially when you're trying to enjoy a nice Pelican snow cone.
For sure.
I mean,
exactly.
They try and, if you could share it with the bugs, then they would eat those. I'd be less bothered by it. But unfortunately, they seem to like humans and human blood, and that's where the concern comes in. Because in addition to the obvious annoying things like the itching and the red bumps and the rashes and the things that are outwardly visible, they can cause more serious illness at times that a lot of people aren't aware of. Mosquitoes, I mean, the big news story, not directly here, but Zika virus is a big concern, and other things, like we call them arboviruses, transmitted by mosquitoes, can cause problems that can lead to neurologic issues. These aren't very common things, to be sure, but they are there, and so it's important to protect yourself for all of those reasons, from the obvious to the ones that may not seem of note to most people because they just don't see it very much.
Sure.
So protection's the key, and prevention, and how can you do that best? And the most obvious answer is bug spray.
Sure.
Or not going out, but I wouldn't do that. We've got a beautiful state. We should go out and enjoy and spend the time out there, and the reason I came south is so I could be outside, not inside. So wearing clothes that protect you, that's one thing that's helpful. In the summer, it's obviously difficult to wear long sleeves when it's 90 plus degrees outside.
Definitely.
So the next best thing evidence shows there's two chemical types of bug spray that can be put on that are very effective and safe. The first one most commonly people have heard of is DEET. And DEET is a chemical that sprays on and it makes the bugs not want to bite you and is very helpful. And the other one is called picaridin, and that's another one also that's been shown to be as effective as DEET. Brand names in the United States, the picaridin is Cutter. And like Off is the DEET one. That there's some other brands too, but those are the most common ones you'll see out there, and they can be very helpful for prevention. The key is to actually, like everything else, is knowing how they work and knowing what makes them effective or not. Because some people I've seen go out, they have the kids bug spray, and they figure I'm going to be out for a longer period of time, so make them till they're dripping wet in it, and they think that's going to protect them for longer. Not the case.
Really?
No, it's not.
Man. That's what I do to myself. Is that not right?
No. In fact, the bath of DEET doesn't work either. You don't want to fill up the bathtub with DEET and just lay in it. It doesn't work. It's really about the concentration of DEET or the picaridin that you're using. Those are the ones that the concentration is more important than the amount you slather on.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like nicely finely smoked ribs. It's not about how much sauce you put on the ribs.
You know, there's a balance, right?
It's how you often you apply each layer.
If we have time at the end, Dr. Ostrovsky will share his secret rib recipe, but we haven't decided
if you're
that.
a good audience, maybe.
So what should people look for on the labels of particular products?
So you want to look for the percentage of DEET, or again, that's the most common. So I'm just going to stick to talking about DEET at this point.
Sure.
But you want to use the least amount of percentage for the amount of time you're going to be out. So the evidence that's out there says that about 10% DEET is where you'd want to start. Although they sell like a kids version, which is the lowest. It's a little bit under 10%. And for those lower percentages, they run about an hour to 2 of protection.
Okay.
And then all the way up to around 30%, which is the maximum amount of DEET that we recommend, the AAP recommends. So it's between 10 and 30% really that you want to hit that sweet spot, and you want to do the lowest amount for how long you're going to be outside. So the evidence says about, when they did studies, who would volunteer for this study? Get yourself locked in a cage and they let the mosquitoes loose on you, and they see how long you last before they start biting. So about 24 to 30% gets you about 5 to 7 hours of protection. So if you're going out in the woods, camping, going for a walk, in the mountains, about 30% DEET. Spray it on once and apply a thin layer. You could reapply one more layer if you feel like you're starting to get bit a bit sooner, but you really shouldn't be, again, dripping yourself on. And also, you don't want to spray. You want to rub it on, and you only do the external areas. So don't do it before you put on your clothes. Put on your clothes, spray, then rub it in. On your face, don't spray yourself in the face. On your hands, just like you would do sun screen. We'll talk about that in a second soon, I imagine. And that's the other thing, is that bug spray makes sunscreen about a third less active. So don't buy the combinations just because they wear off, and you want to make sure you're applying the right thing, not too many times. And then the second thing is you want to put on the sunscreen first, and then the bug spray over it. It's okay to combine them, but do those. That would be the order of which to put them on to get the most effect out of your sunscreen. That's
great advice. One thing I should mention before we move on is we are going to mention some brand name products, and I should be clear that neither Dr. Ostrovsky nor I, nor Duke for that matter, is suggesting a particular brand over the other. And so that goes with Cutter or Off, or Pelican Snowball for that matter, although you should probably try.
I'll endorse that one on my own. Independently, it's a staple of derm. If you haven't seen it, it's popular.
One other quick question. So I remember seeing you on TV a few weeks ago talking about tick bites. And so tell us a little bit about that. What are kind of the take-homes in terms of avoiding ticks and managing ticks that you find along the way?
Great. So tick bites are, again, one of those things you want to think about for lots of different reasons. Again, they can cause local reactions, skin irritation. But again, the one that you hear people talk about, say, Lyme disease, I'll be honest, my least favorite is Lyme's. It's not limes, like as in lemons and limes. No, it's Lyme,
L-Y-M-E. It's not a possessive Mr. Lyme or Dr. Lyme.
It's Lyme disease. And these are illnesses that occur because they're not actually caused by the tick, it's caused by the bacteria that live in the mouths of the tick. And there are different bacterias, and those different bacterias or vectors end up causing more serious disease and illness that people, that's the stuff you hear about more commonly, cause, again, some neurologic complications and other system problems, like problems with your liver and fevers and blood problems. Again, not very common to get those illnesses, but when they occur, they can be quite serious. And so, again, it gets back to mostly it's about prevention. So making sure you don't go walking in the woods in open-toed shoes and shorts and not putting on your DEET again. You want to make sure that you're doing yourself having someone do a good head-to-toe look for ticks. Ticks can be as small as a poppy seed or smaller. So just look for that. That dot doesn't look familiar on my skin. And then when you see it and it's a tick, then the key is not to rip it off your body. You want to make sure you get the mouth parts, because that's where the bacteria live inside of the tick. So if you just took off and you left the head there, the bacteria, even though the tick is dead, is still transmitting between you and yourself. So you want to either use a tweezers and grab it at the tip of the head and pull it off, or they have some proprietary things they sell out there, look like little scoops or spoons, look like the back end of a hammer, to essentially get underneath that head and yank it off that way. That's really the best way to to get them out. And I do want to, because people ask a lot of questions about ticks.
Yeah, for sure.
There is, we'll hear something about chronic Lyme disease. And the evidence just really doesn't support the existence of that. Often there's other things that are going on. It could be development of things like chronic fatigue and stuff like that, but there really just hasn't been evidence to support that particular diagnosis. I know it's a bit controversial for some folks, but just through a read of all the stuff that's out there, it just isn't a true entity that people have. There's insufficient evidence to really.
That's helpful to know. That's helpful to know. I do think there's a lot of sort of reality, but also mythology around sort of ticks and that sort of thing. And certainly it is relevant to North Carolina. We have a lot of other great summertime activities to work through, so why don't we move on? So you kind of alluded a little bit to the sun and sun exposure. Dr. Jane Bellett, one of our dermatologists, actually created a nice blog for families, which is on our Kids First blog, which is on our website, pediatrics.duke.edu, for anybody who would like to check that out. But let's kind of extend that conversation a little bit. So what is your advice for sun protection generally for kids of any age, really?
All right, well, I guess we're hitting a theme of prevention.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
all about preventing problems.
That's
and
right.
So, because once you get a sunburn, you've got the sunburn.
Don't get burnt.
Don't get burnt. So if you get burnt, well, we can talk about what to do about that. But the key is don't get burnt. And so what's the rationale? Well, there's different recommendations for different ages to some degree. The most important one from the American Academy of Pediatrics is at least the use of sunscreen. And below the age of 6 months, let me just take a second. On the bug spray piece, by the way, DEET you can use starting at age 2 months of age and older. It's okay, and that's been shown in studies to be fine. Interestingly, the AAP does not recommend the use of sunscreen until the age of 6 months. You might say, gee, that seems strange, that DEET 2, sunscreen 6. And I think the main reason is not one that sunscreen itself is dangerous in its usage, but I think it gives the false sense of security that your child is safe,
completely protected
in the sun. And because the point that they're trying to drive home with that recommendation is really you want to avoid direct sun exposure for prolonged periods in children under 6 months of age. They're very vulnerable to burning, and the recommendation is don't take them out in the peak hours of the sun, which is hard, practically speaking. So if you're going to do that, sun protective clothing, big wide brimmed hats, and just trying to be mindful of the time when you're not, peak sunlight's 11 to like 4, to not go out for prolonged periods of time. Then I think that probably I'm gonna probably go rogue here a little bit from the American Academy of Pediatrics.
All right, our video editors are on call.
Okay, don't tell anybody. Don't tell. I think if you're going to take your child out in the sun, and they're under 6 months, and you were still making an effort to protect them, you want to put a little sun cream on the exposed areas. I'm getting crazy here. Just a thin layer on the backs of the hands or something,
Good to know.
so you don't.
Good to know.
So you don't. I'd rather personally, if you're asking me that risk benefit for me, I think I would.
And what's the right SPF number, would you say, for an older kid, let's say?
Okay, so so once you get into sunscreens, what is the first people say, what is SPF?
For that. Yeah, let's start
SPF, it means sun protection factor.
Okay.
And what that's really grabbing at is if you go out in the sun, you're going to crisp pretty quickly, right? 10, 15 minutes. Although not necessarily, those numbers really 10, 15 minutes isn't when you're going to get a burn. That's when you start to see sun damage from the skin to the skin from that period of time. So an SPF number gives you the approximate amount of time more than your regular time to start damaging your skin. So if you have an SPF of 15, take your normal amount of burn time and multiply it by 15, and that's how long it'll start before you start getting that damage.
Gotcha.
So if you're a normal skin burner or damager in about 10 minutes, and a sun protection factor of 10, 10 times 10.
So you got 100 minutes.
Right.
Okay.
So
I got you.
Now, when you get above, so if you start thinking about it, when you get above a number of SPF 50, you're not getting any really additional derived benefit.
That's going to be my question.
And the other thing, so people start saying, again, it's like this with the bug spray here. It's like if I just put on a ton, I can just go out all day and be fine. The key is that you sweat. you go in the water, it gets worn off, so it's no longer there. Even if it's got a sun protection factor of 1 million, you're gonna burn through it.
But that doesn't exist, does it?
No.
1 million?
No.
Okay.
No,
right. Just to be clear.
No.
So don't go looking for that.
Yeah, sorry. I'm working on it.
False advertising
I'm working on
here.
it, but
Okay.
it's not out there yet.
Right, fair enough.
But so even if you have the highest sun protection levels above 50, you're really gonna not get a derived benefit, and you should still, even if it's a 50, thinking about that time of what the SPF means, you're really functionally only getting an hour to 2 of protection from anything, because you're going to wear it off and you need to reapply. So that's the key measure, is you need to reapply often. So if you're at a sun protection of 15 to 30, you're probably about right for when you need to. You'd be fine as long as you're reapplying every hour to 2.
Good to know. Good to know. So another hot spot in terms of summertime activity is the waterfront, right? So
Love the water.
Whether we're at the community pool or maybe the local Y or over at the Outer Banks, whatever your pleasure, kids are always going to gravitate to the water. And so what are some common tips? I think we kind of get to the point where it may be less of a nuisance concern, but really risk, significant risk of injury. My understanding is recently they've sort of shown that drowning is the number 2 risk of death, actually, in many age ranges of children. And so this is a serious thing. And so what are the things that you would sort of common sense and then maybe more nuanced advice you would give to a family just to ensure safety, even for a kid who loves to be in the water and is going to go for it?
Yeah, most important is just never leave your kids alone when they're around water. If it's a pool party going on, it's easy to get sucked over to those ribs and the barbecue chicken and all the good stuff that's out there that you're trying to enjoy and get that moment of sunshine. You're talking to your fellow parents, and if you've got a child, even up to teenagers, you just cannot leave. You got to have that third eye going all the time. You have to know where your children are. That's very important. They wander off, and it only takes a second. It only takes a second to fall into a pool. And if no one sees it, and even if they do see it, it may not be enough time before a drowning or near drowning can occur. And that's the worst tragedy. The worst tragedy, because it's entirely preventable. And for those who own pools or frequent pools, you should make sure that whatever pool you go to, if you are joining a community pool or if it's your own pool, has the appropriate safety measures. And those kinds of things include, if you're a community pool, a lifeguard is a great thing to have or if they don't have a lifeguard, again, a fenced-in pool or that can't be gotten to unless with latches, so younger children can't wander in there. You want to make sure that the pool has appropriate safety equipment, which includes buoys to throw so more people don't drown while trying to save someone from drowning. And just making sure that, again, never swim alone is a good rule for everybody. You should never swim alone, and be there. If you go to the beaches, another interesting phenomenon is the riptide, which is a kind of current that pulls you out regardless of how hard you try to swim in, and that causes a fair number of either close to drownings or near drownings. And it's very scary. I've been caught in one myself. It's really frightening because you can't move it. If you don't know what to do, you just feel like you're going to get sucked out to sea, which could happen. So the key is, for those kinds of problems, for those who like to go to the coast, when you get into a rip current, you swim parallel to the shore to get out of it, because they go like this, and so it's like a slice through the water. So if you just keep swimming sideways, you should eventually get out of the rip current and be able to then come back.
Gotcha. That's a great tip, actually. I didn't know that. So it sounds like from a water safety, drowning prevention standpoint, it really is just significant vigilance and making sure that, however confident the kid might be as a swimmer, that you sort of err on the side of safety, for sure. Yeah, that's good advice.
Now, when did you take your kids for swimming lessons? Do you think swimming lessons can be helpful?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think our kids, we have 2 kids at home, and they were one's sort of not that water avid, and then the other is. Actually, they're quite divergent in that regard, which makes it hard for me as a parent at the pool to kind of keep in mind that I need to watch the little one, just because I know he thinks he's fearless in terms of the water. Well, what's your recommendation? Is that something that families should actively be thinking about, even if they maybe as a family don't often go to the pool?
Well, it was something that I started to think about, because we did take our kids. I was brought up on a lake in the water, so water was part of my life always, and I thought it's very important to know how to swim. But then it became, well, when should you really learn to swim, and when is it helpful? So I looked up some of the different information and what AAP says and all that stuff, and It's interesting. I mean, because you also, when I took my kids to swimming, we started, I think, when he got about school age, 4 to 6, somewhere. I can't remember. I think different ages for my 2 kids. But went in the water. These little baby classes with the moms and dads in the water. Bloop, 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 singing songs and stuff like that. Is that helpful or not? I mean, it looked like it was relaxing and fun. But in terms of how effective it is, it actually, I think below 2 it's not.
Okay.
Going to really help them in terms of being safer swimmers and all that.
Still might be a good experience.
I don't.
Right. Just
it's
in general,
right in
but
terms
not
of
for a safety.
Exactly. In other words, it's a comfort thing. Like I think making kids more comfortable to get into the water. That's totally. I'm not saying don't do it. Good. I'm just saying, but don't think that because you took your kid to
makes sense.
Started kids swimming earlier that they're more ready to swim alone or swim unsupervised because they're stronger swimmers at an earlier age. They're still prone to poor judgment. They're still prone to just other things like being not strong enough and not knowing their limits, and that can lead to actually sometimes a false sense of security. Right. Just know that I think it's great to think about swimming lessons, but just don't be overly assured by the fact that they started earlier.
I think that makes a lot of sense. In my mind, I was thinking actually about a lot of the counsel we give to families around teenage driving. It's less a question of whether your teenager can stay between the lines on a sunny day with perfect weather, with completely alert. It's those unexpected moments, right? So it's slipping on the side of the pool. It's hitting your head on this or that. It's the big wave that you didn't know was coming, right? It's those sorts of unanticipated things.
Right.
So
And that can be for adults too. But I think
you're exactly right.
But I think that's a good way to look at general things that we let our children do when they're ready to do it. It isn't can they do it, but can they do it when something goes wrong?
Sure.
How are they going to handle and interpret a situation that's not the normal of driving 55? I mean, probably my 8 and 11-year-old could pop in the car and step on the gas and drive the car, going down 15-501 with nobody on the road.
Right.
But a dog runs out in the street. How are they going to react to that? Completely. That's where you start to see that upper level thinking that you have to think about when you're trying to make that decision about whether you should let your kid do something that maybe might not be a good idea.
This is all helpful information. Before we move on, I'm going to check in with our team here and see if there's any questions from the Facebook audience currently.
There is. We have a question about germy pools. She says she has, it's a woman she has a dermatology nurse friend who refuses to swim in a public pool. She has a son with a mild immune deficiency, so she's just concerned about, if there's
germs in pools.
Yeah.
So now I want to disclaim for a child with an immune deficiency disorder, I'm not an expert on immunodeficiencies and all the specifics, but I think a general rule of thumb is that pools can have germs in them, and I think it depends on the upkeep of that pool. I mean, it's like anything else. I think you want to make sure that if you're in a community pool, there's nothing wrong with it if it's been treated well. I mean, I think that you have to be mindful that little kids who are in pools have accidents in pools, and they do their if you've all been to that, I don't know, at least once a while. I've been to Great Wolf Lava. They had to close off a whole area for like an hour and a half while they get rid of it because we had a little diaper accident. So, I mean, I think you have to be mindful of who you're swimming with and who's in the water, or what the pool rules are. If you have a child who has, specifically if they have some sort of immune disorder, because things like coliform bacteria, E. coli, and things like that can cause illness if you were to drink it. Could be of risk, but a well-kept pool has those chemicals in it that kill things like coliform bacteria. And for the average person, I don't think it should be a concern as long as you have faith in the pool you're using, that is being kept up well. And I suppose if you're paying for the pool, you have there's someone that has to be responsible for that. And you could talk to them, say, my child has this issue. Can you tell me what you do specifically to maintain the integrity of the pool?
Yeah. That's a great response. I think the participant who kind of raising this notion is it's really important actually that not all kids are facing the same circumstances, and so a lot of the advice we're providing is really kind of for the majority of kids who may not have particular circumstances. But I think kind of raising the notion of immune deficiencies in particular, I think just think of the variety of those things, right? That's not just kind of one entity, but there's a wide range of potential risk related to that. And so certainly talking with your immunologist or other specialist who's helping you navigate those types of risks. And then it also kind of draws into the fore that there's a communal aspect to this, right? And so for your kids and your family to kind of be respectful of the rules of the pool that you're working with, so that maybe you don't unintentionally put risk upon another family. And so I think those sorts of things are always important.
And things like showering, but they have to take a shower before you get into the pool to cleanse your outer.
That's
If you
right.
think about it, I mean, it should really be about the same level of risk of touching another person. I mean, so if you think about it that way, that's the kind of germs that you'd be passing on unless you have an accident in the pool.
That's right.
Other than that, it should be very safe. And the only caveat that I can think of specifically is hot tubs. And hot tubs, one for kids is not usually a good idea because the temperatures can actually be hot enough to burn sometimes, and you don't want to encourage young children or unsupervised kids to go in those. And that because of the heat, it's a little more difficult to control some bacteria, and you can get some more skin problems. There's a hot tub, what we call hot tub folliculitis, that can be quite unpleasant to get, but it isn't common. But again, probably wouldn't recommend specifically, especially if you have an immune issue, to go into hot tubs that are not your own.
And that's more related to the temperature, right? Because I know our kids love sort of these cool whirlpools that have, bubbles and stuff, and so.
Right. It's not specifically a hot tub.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Good to know. We have a couple more topics to kind of launch through. Do we still have time?
5 minutes.
Okay. So we'll go for another 5 minutes. We appreciate you kind of joining us here. So let's kind of hit a couple things. So our kids love their bikes, and they're sort of little scooter things, and our younger kid for a while had this helmet that, barely covered his hairline. Is that okay, or is that, how serious is the helmet issue, and what's the recommendation as to right-sizing that for a kid?
Okay, so helmets, just do it.
Yeah.
You adults, kids, you should wear a helmet if you're going to be on something, other than if you're walking. I mean, it protects the most important part of your physiology. Although when I think about what part of my body is telling me to say that, it's got a little vested interest, the brain. So anyway, it is really important because, I don't know about you, but in my training, as I've seen some really tragic,
For sure.
Cases of totally normal, healthy children who no longer are totally normal nor healthy and never will be. And it's just, again, it's preventable and such a simple thing, not expensive. A lot of places you can get free helmets. It's so important, so important. Bicycling, skateboarding, inline skating, scootering, if it's not your own feet you're walking on, put a helmet on.
That's a good one.
And then to the point of the little, you're describing, I'm picturing like one of those little monkey hats you got that you described, the little point, what do you call those beanies the Shriners wear on their heads? It's for your description. But I'm thinking about what's the right way to make sure your helmet fits correctly.
Yeah.
So you'll know it's correct if you put it on, it's a snug fit, but if they look up, they can see like the little tip sticking up over them.
Okay.
So that's how you know it's the right fit, if it's that way. And then it's snug, and then you put your fingers in the little side straps should go around your ears, not over them. They're too small if it is. And then they should be able to open their mouth wide with it open without getting choked, and then be able to have like just one finger breath in between the bottom when sizing your helmet.
That's very helpful. And then just to reiterate in my mind, the sort of the phrase that you said that rhymed, actually, it was pretty catchy. So if it's not your own feet that you're on, put a helmet on. Is that right?
That sounds right.
Is that what you said?
I don't know, but
I don't want to misquote you.
Well, we can roll back. Can we roll back the tape? I don't know. But
we'll go back later.
That was the point. If you're
not on your own feet.
If you're not on your feet, put a helmet on.
So even if you're a young kid who's going, very, very slowly on a scooter, there's still a potential.
Absolutely. I mean, you never know. So you're going slow, you got the wheel slips or something, boom, you're down. And then, if you could have prevented it, and then especially with those scooter things, wrist braces, because we get the fractures on the outstretched arm. If you have wrist braces or knee braces, that can prevent a lot of injury and a lot of ER visits and a lot of copays.
Okay. All right.
Although they do get to have those colorful different casts every week. that they bring in.
That is a side benefit for sure.
I guess if there's a
depends what you're in.
There's a glowing moment for everything, right?
Are you one more topic area? Is that okay?
I'm here. All
right, so it's almost lunchtime, and I wish I were heading out to some sort of July 4th cookout perhaps and that sort of thing. I know a lot of families are probably already planning for their whatever they typically do for that type of festivity. And so, can you talk a little bit? The two things my kids love are burgers and dogs and other foods for sure. But then, when July 4th comes around, they're always begging us to get those sparklers. Those kids love the elements, right? They love the water, they love dirt, and they love fire. And so, talk to us about all things cookout in terms of July 4th coming up.
July 4th. Well, let's start with the firework thing.
Sure.
I think so. Fireworks are incredible. They're fun to watch. They're really amazing. So go see a professional show. Those are amazing.
Okay.
And great.
Sure.
The little lousy things, yay! And by the way, you can
He's
get
underwhelmed.
Yeah, they're underwhelming and they're overly dangerous.
Okay.
So fireworks run by non-professionals are what causes all the spike in burn injuries.
Okay.
And busy July 4ths in the ER.
Okay.
So
even those little sparkler things?
Even those would you believe it if I told you? Would you believe it?
Okay, hold on.
Would you believe it, Richard?
I'm going to buckle my seatbelt.
Buckle in. 1,000 degrees. Those sparklers,
1,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
1,000 degrees Fahrenheit they can get up to. It's a fire. It's magnesium burning at high temperatures. And they show why do they spark? They're so hot they can't even stay on the stick. Boom! And so they look great. Yeah, and they're, if you stand there like this and you hold the very, very bottom and you don't move, you're probably fine. But that's not what's going to happen with a kid.
Gotcha.
And the sparks can fall and they can fly and they can hit you, and it's 1,000 degrees. Would you say, okay, there's the stove element. Put your fingers next to the stove and just don't move them.
Right, sure.
You'll be fine. Just don't move them.
Yikes. Okay.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's just not worth it.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
The fireworks, they're great.
Okay.
Go see them.
Okay.
But leave it to the professionals.
Okay.
As far as cooking, same thing with the grill.
And by the way, this is a perfect segue to his rib recipe, which he may or may not disclose to you at the end. So go for it.
All right. Okay. So cooking. Again, when I cook, I make sure that everybody knows my grill's on, and I tell them, don't touch the food.
Yeah.
Until it's on the plate for you. Don't touch my grill.
Okay.
Don't touch my smoker. Don't touch my other cookie stuff. Don't go near the stove. It's on.
Yeah.
I let people know so there was not the potential for injury. Because again, you should probably not leave your things unattended unless you're trying to run 6 different things like I do. In which case, I just tell people and I don't let them go near it. But I probably shouldn't. I'm probably a bad person. But you'll
we won't answer that question.
All right, you don't have to answer.
It's an open question. Okay.
All right. So, but I just try to make sure people know so there's not going to be unintentional burn injuries again. And then with the food, you'll see flies. So it's good to have them covered or kept. Maybe bring the food inside or keep it shaded or in a screened-in area so that it's not going to get bugs all over it or spoil quickly. You don't want to have that 7-hour mayonnaise that's got that weird glaze on top of it. Unless you're looking for little hallucinations going on or a trip to the ER, don't do that. So again, it's better to sometimes if you can stage your party such that things are at a cooler area protected so they're not going to go bad as fast. And making sure you still wash your hands before you eat because again, you've been playing, especially outside, you get all those worried about germs again. A good wash of the hands, soap and water, just before you chow down. Again, also avoiding and worrying, eating too much and making yourself sick. Eat the right amount. We want to stay healthy. This is about healthy lifestyles. We don't that outside exercising. Don't overdo it. And choking hazards as well. So people should be aware of how to manage a choking incident, which I always, encourage. A lot of these things we talked about so far, like pool safety, drowning, and choking and things like that. Those can all be. I would like to endorse here. I will endorse the American Heart Association. I think parents who are interested and capable and have the ability should take a basic life support class. I think it's
a great idea.
The key thing is not so much that you should ever plan on doing it, but is that if it comes up, the key is calm. The key is feeling empowered enough and knowing what to do, which is call 911 is the key element of most BLS protocols, but knowing what to do if the event somebody's choking, because you could save somebody's life.
Good advice. Good advice. Thank you, Dr. Ostrovsky, for joining us.
It was my sincere pleasure.
You know, parents at home, you may be tempted, based on all of the things we've talked about, to keep your kids at home, bundled up in their bed, and away from anything and everything. But that is not what we're trying to get at.
No, although I am available as an official party pooper. If you want, I don't charge very much.
Our goal here is to actually help you and us to feel empowered for your kids to really do whatever it is that they're hoping to do this summer and to really make special memories. But in order to do that, we also need to have sort of common sense precautions, which Dr. Ostrovsky worked through with us, and just kind of keeping those very basic but really important things in mind. And so before we end, any other questions from the audience? Perfect. Okay. So hopefully we've kind of touched on some of the things you've been curious about. We do these Facebook Lives periodically. If you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to hear about or specific experts you'd like to see on screen, please do let us know, and have a great summer.